Did you know that Gege Akutami hadn't even conceived of domain expansions until after Jujutsu Kaisen 0? And that's most likely why we never saw Geto get a domain, because he was killed in Jujutsu Kaisen 0 before they were ever even a thing. This also helps to explain why we only see like 2 or 3 characters across the entire series ever use a maximum version of their technique, which is what Geto used in Jujutsu Kaisen 0, his maximum Uzumaki. And he even goes on, or at least Kenjaku even goes on, to use it later in JJK, but I think that just shows how Gege largely moved away from that being the pinnacle of Jujutsu towards domain expansions. And that brings me to this question I got from Chris, who poses, what if domain expansions had never been a thing? How would that have shifted the power scaling in Jujutsu Kaisen? And this is an interesting question that really just goes as far as we want to push it. And what I mean by that is that just in a vacuum, if we strip domain expansions, sure, the people that had them are getting weaker, but the people that had them were the strongest people already, right? Like they only got a domain because they were the strongest. So I don't really think it moves the needle that much, except for people like Hikari and Higuruma, whose curse techniques are their domains. We're basically just stripping everything they have from them. So they obviously get way weaker, but Gojo and Sukuna, they're still sitting atop the verse because, yeah, their domains are insane, but they don't need them to beat you. On the other side of that coin, though, really strong characters that just don't have a domain for whatever reason would obviously go way up the charts in terms of their strength. I'm talking people like Kashimo, Mei, and Toto. Their stocks would go way up. And as a follow-up to that, Chris asked if we do remove domain expansions, would domain amplifications still exist? And this is another one that's hard to say, right? Because it just depends on how exactly we're tinkering with the rules of the universe here. Because if we're just cleaving off domain expansions as the pinnacle of Jujutsu, but barrier techniques in general are still going to remain, then I think domain amplification would still work. Because barriers are at the foundation of like so much different Jujutsu. And just because we're stripping away domains, like the bringing of innate domains into reality, I don't think these just necessarily disappear. They obviously operate on a very similar principle, but I think they could still exist. But if we just want to hypothetically remove them as well and potentially all barrier techniques, then what ways would people have to get through Gojo's Limitless? Because as it stands, the sure hit of a domain expansion and domain amplification are the only 2 ways to bypass the Limitless. So assuming we're going to exclude like Gojo getting tired and running out of cursed energy and stuff like that, there would be no other way to get through it unless somebody had like a specific curse technique that allowed them to win like the matchup for some reason. Like, for example, like Maharaga, the way that Maharaga could adapt and cut through space itself. Weird things like that would be the only way. Now, don't get me wrong, I think domains are really cool, but it would be fun to think about a hypothetical version of JJK without domains, without sure hit effects, and instead different maximum versions of techniques. Like if that was the power system Gege went with. Y'all let me know if you have any cool ideas.